Hello, and welcome to another edition of What You Need to Know, a Canadian podcast by Blue Sky Strategy Group. I'm Susan Smith, and once again, I'm joined by my colleagues Tim Barber, Neil Brody, and Cam Holmstrom. How's everybody doing this snowy morning?
Great.
Awesome.
Lovely.
Excellent. Well, you know, as political nerds that we all are, the House is coming back next week. It's a lockdown and a stay-at-home order still in Ontario. The House of Commons is still located in Ontario, in Ottawa. It hasn't moved over the holidays. So, Cam, what's this return going to look like? Are we still in a hybrid parliament situation?
Well, at this point, we're still waiting to find out. As of our recording this right now, there hasn't been any public announcement as to what will happen, because when the holidays came, the actual emergency measures in the House had expired. They were not extended. The parties couldn't agree to extend it before they left. And I know a couple of weeks ago, the Conservatives had attempted to start up one of the committees with an emergency meeting, but had insisted that it happen in person with everyone, and that caused its own kerfluffle amongst the different parties. As of right now, there are meetings booked for next week, and I would assume that until we find out otherwise, it would be in person, although I would expect that will change at some point, just because, as you mentioned, Susan, and you're right, Ottawa is still in Ontario, is still across the river from Quebec. Both are still dealing with COVID in very big ways. And just the logistics of having MPs traveling in from across the country with different rules. And frankly, even those coming in from the East Coast, where you're talking about 14 days quarantine going back and forth, it's not feasible right now to go back to the normal parliament as usual. And I think as of last time, common sense will come to rule the day.
So it looks like the first order of business will be the how parliamentary business is going to take place, and we'll put something in. Once they get through that, then what do you think we'll expect this in the next few weeks in this session of Parliament from government and from the opposition? Tim, you looked like you had something good to say there.
Well, I think that the big focus should be on the budget and the pandemic. And it's likely going to be on the Governor General, Derek Sloan, among other things, right? So I'm anxious to see, is the opposition going to be up to the old antics, or will it be the same? I do think that the Canadian public is going to have a very short fuse, on people that focus on anything than the here and now of getting vaccinations sped up and dealing with COVID. That is the number one issue. So I don't expect it to be much else. I think there are a lot of games to be played around Julie Payette and Derek Sloan, but I think it'll very quickly get a lot more serious. That is my hope.
Neil, how much time do you think the Conservatives will expend on the Governor General versus vaccine rollout delays?
Well, if they're smart, they'll spend zero time on the Governor General and quite a bit of time on vaccine rollout. Once you get, for those of you who don't live or stay in Ottawa, once you get south of Laurier Street in Ottawa, nobody really notices what the Governor General does. I'm not saying it's a figurehead do nothing job, but it's not a major part of the average public person's wheelhouse. For the opposition, a majority of the time is going to be spent on vaccine rollout, as long as Pfizer, whoever it is, isn't sending vaccines to Canada. That will be the first question period every day. I expect a lot of time to be spent on the Keystone XL U.S. relations file as well. If I was in opposition, I would be asking the responsible minister for daily updates on the Trans Mountain pipeline, the one and only pipeline that's under construction right now for taking Canadian resources to Tidewater. I was on their website earlier this week, and they have timelines, construction timelines on there, and some of the construction timelines are supposed to be finished in December 2020 and January 2021. And if there's an enterprising political staffer out there, they might make a list of that and feed it to opposition questioners and start off with that Monday morning.
Well, that's certainly something that could be dived into. It was a bit of a setback with definitely a setback for Canada and for Canada-U.S. relations, I would say, though not permanently damaging on KXL. When we come back, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But Cam, what do you think the NDP will zero in on in the upcoming session of Parliament?
I expect it's going to be COVID, and it's going to be COVID, and it's going to be more COVID. I suspect it's going to come back to some matters like sick pay. Obviously, that's a very big issue for a lot of people right now. People are being asked to stay at home, is to have that sick pay to ensure they actually can stay home. I think also we're going to hear talk about long-term care as well, and the impact on homes. The one thing I'd actually hope that someone would raise, and to me, I think it's a very legitimate question, again, for some enterprising staffer out there who wants to earn some brownie points with their boss. The fact is that we only have 2 vaccines that have been approved, but we know there are multiple vaccines that have been pre-ordered. And we haven't heard a whole lot in the last few weeks about where things are at with the approval of other vaccines. And I think for someone who's looking to try to find a solution to an issue right now, that would be a good question to start asking, because let's face it, the delays with Pfizer are beyond our control, but they're only one of 6 or 7 companies we were purchasing these vaccines from. So we've only received from 2. There's 5 still sitting out there. Where are they in the queue? I think that'd be a very good question to know, and would show your productivity in this moment. The other thing I expect to come up and I'm just throws out there from the block, is I expect, we're talking about how serious people are in this moment. A lot of the chatter from the block lately has been, frankly, it's been a little disturbing. It's been around identity politics, the attack, the very very cheap shot taken at new Minister Alghabra, but also talk about the new journalist with CBC who's hosting show in the evenings, and her veil, and all of these things around religion and the role of the state. It is, but I also expect, the fact is that we expect there's going to be an election coming, and I would not be the least bit surprised, unfortunately, if the bloc, and rather than focusing on the pandemic, on the economy, on the health of people who live in their province, to play that card. And I'd like to think that I think this will be the true test of just how much patience people have for this garbage right now. And I personally feel that after what happened in Washington a couple weeks ago, there's not a lot of patience for it, but we'll see.
Well, speaking of not a lot of patience for garbage, Aaron O'Toole tossed out something that was a bit stinking and rotten in the Conservative caucus this week, and that was Derek Sloan. He chose a day to do it, interestingly, the same day as the U.S. inauguration, when there was a lot of other news going on, and Sloan got tossed out. Neil, do you expect there to be any further ramifications of that? Anybody else that might not meet the test for Aaron O'Toole as he sets up to go for potentially an election in 2021?
Well, let's just. I don't know if there's. I don't know if there's other people who may have the same fate befall them as Mr. Sloan, but let's cheer one for the new rules in Parliament if a party decides to adopt them. Is caucus gets to decide this. The membership of the House of Commons who sit in Conservative seats decide that it was time to get Mr. Sloan out. Should it be, there's going to be questions about whether it should have been done sooner. There are ample opportunities starting at the beginning of 2020 to perhaps put this question to caucus, but it finally reached its peak this week, and good riddance to him. There's a process. The process worked. And hopefully the Conservative Party can move on and be a loyal opposition and hold the government's feet to the fire on things that it thinks is relevant to Canadians.
Well, I think it's good that Mr. O'Toole got rid of something that was a problem for the party. It was something, and it was evidence of a little bit of seepage of U.S. politics coming, or the old U.S. politics coming into Canadian politics, and thankfully on Wednesday, the page turned down south of the border. I know I was glued to my television on Wednesday. I was completely inspired by Amanda Gorman, the young poet that everybody is talking about. But more, and most importantly, we have a new president and we have a new vice president. Tim, what do you think the Biden-Harris administration is going to mean for Canada-U.S. relations? The Prime Minister of Canada was first on the list for foreign leaders' phone calls again, which is a very good signal since it can't be a visit immediately, but it certainly can be a phone call. What do you think this means for the government and for Canada?
I think that these people know one another. I will remind people that 4 years ago, during the lame duck period, then Vice President Biden came and visited Ottawa. There is a warmth there. There's a lot of the former Obama administration, which has excellent relations with members of the Trudeau cabinet. I will point to one, Gina McCarthy and Catherine McKenna. I think that they are fellow travelers on a number of really important files, and I'll give you one: carbon tax. I know that there is a real hope in the Trudeau administration that the Biden administration adopts some form of carbon tax, because it takes an important criticism of the Canadian carbon tax away, which is one of competitiveness and cross-border. Another one is, I think they'll find a lot more commonality on things like digital taxation. But I will go back to the resource file. I too am deeply disappointed that the Biden administration is canceling the KXL permit. I think it's a real slap in the face, frankly. For the past 12 years, successive governments have been very supportive of that, working very hard. And I don't understand entirely why the Trump administration was not able to get it over the line in a 4-year period. That said, there's a lot riding on this. And I think that the ENG community is basically committed to making our oil sands resources landlocked. And that's really terrifying, I think, for the sector. So we better start thinking very carefully what we're doing. I'm intrigued by what Neil said about the TMX construction timeline, so I'll be watching that very closely as well in the House of Commons.
Yeah, I have a close eye on the KXL file, at least from the Canadian side of the border, and I do know that the federal government was actively engaged. From Kirsten Hellman in Washington to the Prime Minister to the Foreign Affairs Minister to the Natural Resources Minister. There was a very high level of engagement and support for the project. I heard. Tim, you and I were in Washington the first time Justin Trudeau said in a room full of
progressives,
Democrats, yes, that he was supportive of the project. And there was a gasp around the room. Al Gore was in the room, and Trudeau was consistent on that. So Jason Kenney has leveled some charges at the feds that I actually don't think aren't fair. And I actually know they're not fair, because I know from a different side perspective some of the work that was being done. Cam, quickly, do you think, I think we're done with the tit-for-tat tariff war. Any other possible benefits of an improved Canada-U.S. relationship you see in the next few months and years?
Well, the big benefit I see comes on the international scene, just the whole value of alliances again. I think that's been the one thing that I've always found to be the most striking, was that there's complete disregard that the Trump administration had for those alliances like NATO and the WTO and the WHO and all these international bodies and their place in the world order. So it's nice to have someone back in that space that can help calm that down. And there'll be some time to rebuild those relationships. The other thing, though, I'm watching this in play with the KXL piece is that I think as a one-off event, it obviously we always have disagreements between us and our neighbors, and that'll continue to happen. To me, the next side of that will come when it comes to the Buy American policies in the States. And I think that's where the rubber really hits the road when it comes to how we react to KXL. It's one thing to have lost that pipeline and that project. But if there's not some reciprocity on the other side when it comes to Buy America and allowing our steel makers and our manufacturers and our construction companies to be able to take part in American projects, if that also comes down against us, then we're going to have a much bigger problem. That's more of a pattern of behavior, and I think that's something that'll find a lot of unity for greater action like the which that Mr. Kenney is calling for now. And I think that's going to be a bit of a longer game, but it's not going to be that much longer, because the one thing we can say about the Biden administration is they're moving fast. They're not wasting time, and I suspect that'll be a policy decision that'll come down relatively quick from them. And how they decide to treat us in that matter, I think will go a long way to determining just how good the relationship is going to be going forward.
Yeah, Neil, the word I keep hearing is nearshoring from a Canadian positioning perspective. What do you think?
Reshoring as well.
Yeah, and that's, but to Cam's point on the Buy American side of things, there may be, I think there's a significant advantage for Canadian firms to be positioning themselves in the nearshoring message, because at least it's the North American continent. And to your point, Cam, they kind of owe us one on KXL. Do you think do you think the Buy America provisions, Neil, could end up, there might be a bit of a Canadian lens or a Canadian opt-in component of that?
Well, I certainly hope so. People who know me know that I'm an optimist by heart. I hope for the best, but Canada should prepare for the worst. Mr. Biden will do what's in the best interest of his re-election desires. He will do the best that's things that are in the best interest of the United States. He will not, I don't think, be as gentle as people have made him out to be. He will do what's in his own best interests, and he will do things fast. I think it was Cam who mentioned that he's doing things fast. Midterm elections are coming quite soon. There are 2 Senate seats in play, both in Georgia and in Arizona, which may revert back to the Republican Party. So while Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris and the Democratic Party in the United States have control of the executive and the 2 legislative houses, I expect they will try to get things done as quickly as they possibly can to enact their vision of the United States in 2020, 2021, 2022, and going forward, before there's the opportunity for them to lose their legislative leverage.
Yeah, all good points and things for us to watch in the future. I'd say on the whole, on the week, it was adios to the big orange baby. We're glad he's gone. Welcome into the new administration, and hopefully a restoration of world order, or things settling down a little bit, and Canada-U.S. relations being a little less frantic. So Tim, Neil, Cam, as always, a great discussion. Thanks for joining me again today. And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to What You Need to Know, a Canadian polycast with Blue Sky Strategy Group's team of political observers. Until next time, stay happy and please stay safe.
Blue Sky Strategy Group is one of Canada's leading public affairs firms. For government relations, lobbying, and strategic communications advice across Canada, visit us at blueskystrategygroup.com.